HOA Karen hits my tractor. While harvesting corn and the police arrived to tow her car. It was just another day on the farm, peaceful, quiet, until I saw her. Karen, the HOA president, speeding down the road, eyes locked on my tractor. She was furious. But what happened next? She slammed into it. But here's the twist. As Karen got out of her car, she smiled, like nothing was wrong. But what happened after that? You won't believe it. Hey there, and welcome to HOA Secrets Uncovered. I'm Mark, and today I'm bringing you another crazy HOA story you won't want to miss. I live right here in this quiet suburban neighborhood, the kind where the biggest excitement is when someone's mailbox is a few inches too high. But trust me, today's story, it's anything but ordinary. It was supposed to be just another regular day. The sun had barely risen, and I was already out in the fields, preparing to harvest the corn. The air was fresh, crisp, almost peaceful. There's something about the early morning that makes everything feel right, you know? Like the world is holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. But then, I saw her. Karen, the HOA president. She was standing at her window, staring straight at me. I could feel her eyes on me, even though I was a good 100 feet away. It wasn't like she was doing anything. She wasn't moving. She just stood there, her hands pressed against the glass like she was watching me, studying me. Now, in our neighborhood, we all knew Karen. She was the one who always had something to say about everything, the one who made sure every blade of grass in your yard was the right height. And if it wasn't, well, she'd be knocking on your door faster than you could blink, handing you a fine. I had learned to avoid her, and mostly keep to myself. After all, who wants to deal with a person like that? But that morning, something felt off. The tractor was just sitting there, waiting for me to start harvesting. It was old, a bit beat up, but it did the job. The corn was ready. It wasn't going to wait. So, I got in the driver's seat, turned the key, and let the engine rumble to life. I glanced back up at her house. Karen was still there, still watching me. She wasn't even pretending to be busy. She just stood there, staring at me. For a moment, I thought maybe she was just a little too invested in what I was doing. Maybe she was bored. But then, as I started the tractor and moved toward the cornfield, I saw her. She was on the move. She came outside. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe she was just taking a walk. But then I noticed how quickly she was walking, almost like she was hurrying somewhere. My stomach did a little flip. She didn't wave. She didn't say hello. It was like she was on a mission. I shook my head. It was probably nothing, right? I mean, she couldn't possibly care that much about my tractor being in the field, could she? It wasn't like I was doing anything wrong. It was just a tractor. On my property. In my field. But then, out of nowhere, the sound of a car's engine revving cut through the calm morning air. I turned my head, and there she was again. Karen, in her car, speeding down the road towards me. I could see her through the dust and sunlight, her eyes locked straight ahead, not even looking at the road. She was coming for me. I froze. My heart started racing as I tried to process what was happening. What was she doing? Why was she in such a hurry? The car was getting closer and closer. I could feel my pulse picking up. Something wasn't right. I swear I could almost feel the tension in the air. It was thick, like something was about to break. And then, just as she came around the corner, I heard it. The screech of tires. It happened so fast. She didn't even slow down. The car slammed straight into my tractor. The whole thing jolted as the car's front end hit the back of the machine. Everything went silent for a second. I couldn't believe it. Did she just hit my tractor? I jumped out of the seat, my heart still racing. What the hell just happened? I saw her car, stopped just inches from the tractor, smoke coming from the engine. The damage was done. And then Karen opened the door. She stepped out of the car slowly, like it wasn't a big deal. Her expression was unreadable. She wasn't angry. She wasn't upset. She didn't seem to care that she just wrecked my tractor. She smiled. That smile. That same fake smile she always wore when she was about to make some ridiculous complaint. She looked at the tractor, looked at me, and then, as if it was no big deal, she straightened her shirt and walked over to me. "Looks like you're blocking the road," she said, her voice calm, almost too calm. I stood there, stunned. Did she seriously just say that? "Blocking the road?" I repeated. "You just hit my tractor, Karen." She shrugged, that smile never leaving her face. "You shouldn't park it there. It's a violation of the HOA rules. You know that." I stood there for a moment, trying to process what she was saying. Was she serious? Was she actually trying to blame me for her crashing into my tractor? I could feel my anger rising, but I took a deep breath. I wasn't going to let her get under my skin. I knew I couldn't lose control. I glanced at the car again. The damage was obvious. But Karen? She didn't even look bothered. I was about to say something when she spoke again. "Don't worry," she said, her voice as cold as ever. "I'll be reporting this to the HOA. I'll make sure you get fined for violating the rules." The nerve. The audacity. It hit me then. This wasn't just an accident. It wasn't just a mistake. Karen Wettisai is making this about control. She was going to use this to get me in trouble no matter what. I knew I had to act, but what should I do? Should I just let her walk away with it? Should I take the fine and move on, or fight back and risk making things worse? What would you have done? I could feel the heat in my chest as Karen stood there, still with that smug smile on her face. It was as if nothing had happened. She had just crashed her car into my tractor, and now she was acting like I was the one who had done something wrong. "Don't worry, I'll handle this," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "The HOA will make sure you pay for your little mistake." I was in shock. My mind raced. What the hell was she talking about? A fine? For what? I hadn't done anything wrong, had I? I glanced back at the tractor, now stuck in the dirt and barely holding together after the collision. The front of Karen's car was damaged, but not as much as mine. She was the one who hit me. But somehow, in her twisted world, I was the one who was at fault. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. What could I say? I could yell, I could argue, but I knew it wouldn't change a thing. Karen wasn't the type of person who listened to reason. She didn't care about logic or fairness. She cared about power, about getting her way. "Karen, this is ridiculous," I finally managed to say. "You hit my tractor, and now you're blaming me?" Her smile widened, but this time there was something colder in her eyes. "It's not about who hit what. It's about following the rules." She said it with such confidence that I almost believed it. Almost. I didn't know what to do next. I stood there, watching her, as the realization hit me. This wasn't going to end with just a crash. She wasn't going to let it go. No, this was about power. Karen was using this moment to remind me who was in charge. She was going to make sure I paid, one way or another. I knew right then that I had to do something. I couldn't let her win. But what could I do? I was just a guy trying to run a small farm. I wasn't some big shot with a fancy lawyer. How was I going to take on the HOA president, someone who seemed to control everything around here? The frustration started to build in my chest again, but I pushed it down. I wasn't going to let her see me get angry. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction. Karen turned to leave, her heels clicking sharply against the pavement. "I'll report this to the HOA," she said over her shoulder. "And trust me, they'll make sure you pay for this. You'll see." I watched her walk away, my thoughts swirling. This wasn't just about a simple accident anymore. She had just declared war on me, and I had no idea how deep this was going to go. But one thing was for sure. If she thought I was going to let her get away with it, she had another thing coming. The next few days were a blur of paperwork, calls, and frustrations. Karen was right about one thing. She wasted no time reporting the incident to the HOA. I got a letter in the mail a few days later. A fine for violating the neighborhood safety guidelines. Apparently, I was in the wrong for having my tractor parked on my own land, within my own property lines, for a few minutes while I prepared for the harvest. According to Karen, it was a hazardous obstruction. The audacity. I wanted to laugh, but at the same time, I was furious. This was just petty. This was the kind of thing that made people hate living in a place like this. The HOA had a reputation for being ridiculous. They were known for enforcing rules that didn't make any sense. If you didn't paint your fence the right color, you got a fine. If your lawn wasn't mowed to a precise height, you were punished. It was all about control, about keeping up appearances, about making sure everyone followed the rules, no matter how stupid they were. I had dealt with the HOA before, but this was something different. This wasn't just about a lawn violation or a misplaced garbage can. This was personal. Karen had made it personal, and I wasn't going to let her win. The next morning, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I had two choices. I could either pay the fine and move on, or I could fight back. I wasn't the kind of person who liked conflict. I liked peace. I liked working on my farm, keeping things simple, but I couldn't let Karen win this one. Not after everything that had happened. I knew one thing. If I was going to fight, I had to be smart about it. I wasn't going to get into some petty back and forth with Karen. That's what she wanted. I had to go above her head. I started making phone calls. I contacted my lawyer, who had helped me out with a few things in the past. He listened carefully as I explained the situation, and after a long pause, he gave me some good news. "This fine is bullshit. You don't have to pay it." I was relieved, but also a little scared. This was going to escalate. I could feel it. Karen wasn't going to let me off that easy. She wasn't going to let me get away with challenging her, even if she knew she was in the wrong. But I wasn't going to back down. I spent the next few days gathering evidence, taking pictures of the area around the tractor, gathering old emails, anything that would show how ridiculous the HOA's rules really were. It wasn't going to be easy, but I was ready. I wasn't just going to fight for myself. I was fighting for every person who had ever been pushed around by the HOA. And that's when I realized this wasn't just about one fine. This was bigger than that. This was about standing up for what's right. The day I was supposed to meet with the HOA, I was a bundle of nerves. I had all my paperwork in order. I had my lawyer on speed dial, but still, I knew Karen would be there, and if she was anything like I remembered, she wouldn't go down without a fight. I walked into the HOA meeting, my heart pounding. I looked around, but there she was, sitting in her usual spot, the queen of the HOA kingdom. I could feel her eyes on me before I even spoke. She was ready to make her case. And so was I. It all happened so fast. 1 minute Karen was smiling that icy smile, telling me how the HOA would take care of this. And the next, she was barreling down the road at me. My heart skipped a beat as I watched her car come toward my tractor. The screech of her tires was the only sound that filled the air, and before I could even process what was going on, I saw it. Bam! She slammed straight into the back of my tractor. I couldn't believe it. She wasn't even slowing down. I stumbled back, the noise ringing in my ears, and just stood there for a second, frozen. I didn't know what was worse, the impact itself or the fact that Karen didn't even flinch when it happened. It was like she didn't care at all. It was just another obstacle in her quest for control. I was still standing there when I saw the dust settle. My tractor was pushed a few feet forward. Its rear tires dug into the earth, and the front of Karen's car was crumpled like a piece of paper. It didn't look too bad, at least not for her. But my tracks tore? It was definitely worse for wear. And still, she didn't seem to care. I ran over to the tractor to assess the damage. My heart sank when I saw the dent in the side. It wasn't huge, but it was enough to knock the wind out of me. It wasn't just about the tractor. It was about the principle of the thing. Karen had just ruined my equipment. But she didn't seem bothered, not in the slightest. She opened her car door and stepped out slowly, as if she were taking a leisurely stroll on a Sunday afternoon. She brushed off her clothes, casually fixing her hair like she had just parked in front of her house instead of crashing into my tractor. "Nice job, Karen," I muttered under my breath, but loud enough for her to hear. She didn't even look at me. She just glanced at the damage to her car, looked back at me, and then, get this, she actually smiled. "You're blocking the road," she said, her voice eerily calm. "You know that, right?" I stared at her, my jaw nearly on the ground. Was she seriously blaming me? Was she really pretending this was my fault? I wanted to scream, but I could feel the anger rising, like a pressure building up inside me. I had to keep it together. I couldn't let her win. "Karen, you hit my tractor. You wrecked my equipment," I said, trying to stay calm. "This is your fault. Are you serious?" She didn't respond right away. Instead, she gave me that smile, the same smile she always gave when she was about to make some nonsense claim. "You really shouldn't have parked there," she said with a slight shrug. "It's a violation of the HOA rules. Didn't you read the notice I sent out?" What? Was she actually trying to make this about the HOA rules? I felt a laugh bubbling up in my throat. This couldn't be real. "Are you kidding me right now?" I asked. "You just wrecked my tractor and now you're talking about HOA rules?" She nodded. "I'm just trying to help you. You should have been more careful." I stared at her, feeling my blood boil. I couldn't believe this woman. She hit my tractor, caused damage, and was still acting like she was the victim. And here she was, once again using the HOA rules as a weapon to try and control the situation. But the worst part? It wasn't even about the tractor. It was about the way she was dismissing the fact that she had just made a huge mistake. It was like she didn't care. I knew right then that this wasn't just about a fender bender. This was about Karen's ego. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. "Karen," I said slowly, "I'm going to call the police." Her smile faded just a little, but only for a second. "Call the police if you want," she said, as if it didn't matter to her. "But they'll just tell you the same thing I'm telling you now." Her confidence was unnerving. It was like she knew something I didn't. Like she was certain she was going to win this, no matter what happened. But I wasn't backing down. I pulled out my phone, trying to stay steady. As I dialed the number, Karen stood there, watching me. She didn't even flinch. It was like I was the one doing something wrong. The operator picked up, and I quickly explained the situation. They told me to stay put and that an officer would be on the way. But even as I hung up the phone, I couldn't shake the feeling that Karen was still in control somehow. Karen just stood there, tapping her foot as if she were waiting for something. "You know," she said casually, "I'm sure the police are going to be more concerned about your violation than the crash." I showed her a look. "I'm sure they'll see it my way," I said, trying to sound confident. But she just shrugged again, her smile returning. The minutes dragged by like hours. I couldn't stop thinking about what she'd said. Could the police really side with her? Could the HOA get away with something this ridiculous? I had to keep my cool. I couldn't let Karen win. Not like this. When the police finally arrived, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. I wasn't sure what to expect. But as soon as they saw the situation, their reaction was, well, not what I thought. One of the officers got out of his car and walked toward me, his eyes scanning the scene. "What's going on here?" he asked, looking between Karen and me. Before I could even speak, Karen jumped in. "This man's tractor is blocking the road, officer," she said, pointing at me. "It's causing a hazard, and now it's damaged my car." I stood there, stunned. Was she seriously repeating her ridiculous claim? The officer looked at me, then back at Karen. I could feel my heart racing. This wasn't going to be easy. Finally, the officer spoke. "Let me take a look." He walked over to my tractor and inspected the damage. I watched as he walked around the tractor, nodding to himself. He finally turned to Karen. "Ma'am, I think we need to take a closer look at your car first," he said. "What?" Karen's smile faltered, but she quickly regained her composure. "My car's fine. The real issue here is—" But the officer cut her off. "No, ma'am. I think we need to handle this in order." I looked over at Karen, her face pale. It was starting to sink in. She had underestimated me. It felt like the world had gone silent. The police officer was standing there looking at Karen's car, then glancing back at me. The tension between us was thick enough to cut with a knife. I could feel my heart racing, a mix of anxiety and excitement bubbling up inside me. Karen had always been the one in control, at least that's what she thought. But now everything was changing. She wasn't the one calling the shots anymore. I couldn't believe it, but the officer actually seemed to be siding with me. I had no idea how it was going to play out, but I wasn't about to let this moment slip through my fingers. I watched Karen's face twist, like she couldn't quite believe what was happening. Her smile, the one she wore when she thought she had everything under control, started to fade. I could see her frustration rising. Her eyes darted between the officer and me, like she was trying to find a way to turn things in her favor. She was losing her grip on the situation. The officer leaned in and started talking to her, his tone polite but firm. "Ma'am, it's clear that there's damage to your vehicle, but the issue here is who caused the damage. And right now, it looks like you're the one at fault for hitting the tractor." "What?" It was like the words hit Karen like a ton of bricks. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. For the first time, she was speechless. I couldn't help it. I smiled just a little. This was exactly what I had been waiting for. But Karen wasn't going to give up that easily. She took a step back, her face flushed with anger, and then, in a move that almost seemed rehearsed, she shifted gears. "You don't understand," she said, her voice shaking just a little. "The tractor was in the middle of the road. It was a hazard. It was blocking traffic." I raised an eyebrow. "Blocking traffic?" "It was on my property, Karen. I had it parked for a few minutes. I wasn't blocking anything." Karen shot me a lote. "Okay, that could have burned a hole through steel." "It doesn't matter. You're in violation of HOA rules, and I'm not going to let this go. You'll see." I stood there, feeling the weight of her words, but there was something in the way she was acting. I could tell she was rattled. The officer, still calm and collected, didn't let her intimidation faze him. "Ma'am, if you have an issue with the tractor being parked here, that's something for the HOA to deal with later. But right now, we're focused on the accident that occurred. And based on the damage, it looks like you're responsible." I could almost hear the wind leave Karen's sails as the officer spoke. Her face was red now, and I knew she was fighting the urge to lose it. But I wasn't about to let up. "You can't just do this," she shouted. You can't side with him. I'm the HOA president. I run this neighborhood." Her voice cracked with frustration. She had finally snapped. I had never seen Karen like this before. She was always the one in control, the one with all the answers. But now, she was unraveling. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. The officer's expression remained neutral as he took another look at her car. He then turned to me and said, "We'll have to tow your vehicle, ma'am. It's not roadworthy at the moment." Karen's face turned white. The air around us felt like it was buzzing with energy. The officer walked back to his car and radioed in for a tow truck. Karen looked like she was about to explode. But there was more to come. She turned to me, her eyes wide with a mixture of rage and disbelief. "This isn't over. You'll regret this. You'll see. I'll make sure you pay for this." I could hear the anger in her voice, but I wasn't scared. In fact, I was starting to feel something else. Relief. The truth was, I wasn't alone in this fight, and seeing Karen's power crumble in front of me was the first taste of victory. I wasn't the only one who had suffered under the thumb of the HOA. I could feel the eyes of the other neighbors watching us from their windows. They were all tired of Karen's nonsense, tired of the rules that didn't make sense. For once, it felt like the balance was shifting. The tow truck pulled up, and Karen looked like she had seen a ghost. The officer spoke to the tow driver for a moment before nodding at me. "Your tractor will be fine, sir," the officer said, then turned to Karen, his voice stern. "Your car, however, is going to the impound lot for further inspection." Karen's face twisted with pure fury. I could see her fists clenching at her sides. It was clear she was trying to hold it together, but she was losing it. I couldn't help but wonder, was this the moment Karen realized her power was slipping away? As the tow truck driver started to hook up her car, I could hear Karen muttering under her breath, talking to herself. "This isn't over. You'll pay for this." But I wasn't listening to her anymore. My attention was on the officers, the tow truck, and the reality that this battle, this small but significant victory, was mine. I watched as Karen's car was lifted onto the truck, the vehicle she had taken so much pride in, now being towed away like it was just another piece of junk. It felt like justice, like the world was finally righting itself. The officer turned to me one last time before getting into his car. "Good luck, sir," he said with a nod. As he drove away, I couldn't help but think about the future. What would happen next? Was this really over? Or had I just started something much bigger? I couldn't shake the feeling that something big was about to happen. Karen was finally getting what she deserved. Her car, her pride, her code. Control, all of it was slipping away. But even as the tow truck disappeared down the road with her car, I knew this was far from over. Karen wasn't the type of person to just roll over. She was ruthless, and she'd do whatever it took to get back at me. As the dust settled and the officers drove off, I stood there, watching her empty driveway. For the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. I had stood my ground. I had made the right call. But still, something gnawed at me. Something told me this wasn't the end. I turned and walked back toward my tractor. The damage wasn't as bad as I thought. Just a few dents and scratches. The engine still ran fine. I could fix it. But the bigger issue was what to do next. The HOA wasn't going to let this slide, not with Karen in charge. As I got closer to the tractor, I felt my phone buzz in my pocket. I pulled it out and saw a notification from my lawyer. He had sent me a message earlier, telling me to call him as soon as I could. I hadn't even realized it was that urgent. I tapped on the message, reading the brief text. "Call me. This is serious. I have news." I felt a sudden rush of nerves. What could be so serious? Was Karen already trying to pull some strings to make things worse for me? My stomach tightened. Whatever was coming, I could feel it in my bones. Without wasting any time, I dialed my lawyer's number. The phone rang a few times before he picked up. "Hello?" he answered, his voice urgent but calm. "It's me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You said you had something serious to tell me. What's going on?" I heard him sigh deeply on the other end. "We've got a problem. Karen didn't just report the accident to the HOA. She's gone further than that. She's got connections, and she's making a move to get you into serious trouble." My heart dropped. "What do you mean? I thought we were in the clear." "We're not," he said. "She's managed to push the HOA into taking action against you. She's filed a complaint claiming you've been violating community rules for months. She's got people backing her, and they're looking into everything. Your tractor, your property, even the way you've been handling things with your lawn. You need to prepare yourself." I stood there, stunned. This was worse than I expected. Karen wasn't just trying to get me fined. She was trying to destroy me, to tear apart everything I had worked for. "I thought we were done with this," I said, my voice shaking. "She's already wrecked my tractor and had her car towed. What else does she want?" "You don't understand," he said. "Karen isn't just a petty HOA president. She's someone who knows how to manipulate the system. And she's got leverage. If we don't act fast, we're going to be in legal hot water." The weight of his words hit me like a ton of bricks. I had thought I was in control. I thought I'd won. But Karen's web of influence was far deeper than I realized. "What do I need to do?" I asked, my voice steady despite the panic bubbling inside me. "We need to fight back," he said. "You've got a solid case. But it's going to get messy. We'll need to take legal action to protect your property, and we'll have to make sure we expose her for what she's really doing." I felt a spark of hope. This wasn't over. Not yet. "I'm ready," I said, my resolve hardening. "Let's do this." The next few days were a whirlwind of phone calls, meetings, and paperwork. I couldn't stop thinking about Karen and what she was capable of. She was pulling strings behind the scenes, and it felt like everyone was against me, but I wasn't about to let her win. Not now. Not after everything. I began gathering evidence, documenting everything I could. Photos of the tractor damage, records of past fines from the HOA, anything that could help me in the fight. It was exhausting, but I knew it was necessary. But what worried me the most wasn't the fine or the legal battle. It was Karen herself. She was everywhere. Every time I looked, she was watching. Even when I thought I had a moment of peace, there she was, lurking in the background, ready to strike. One afternoon, after a long day of gathering evidence, I was sitting on my porch when I saw her. Karen was walking down the street, her gaze fixed on my house. Her expression was cold, calculating. She knew I was onto her. She knew I was preparing to fight back. I stood up, instinctively, my heart pounding in my chest. She noticed me watching her, and for the first time, I saw something different in her eyes. It wasn't just anger or frustration. There was something more, something darker. She didn't say a word. She just stood there, looking at me, as if she was waiting for something. For a moment, I felt like the world had stopped. But I wasn't afraid. I wasn't going to back down. Karen could play her games, but I had my own tricks up my sleeve. As I turned to walk back inside, I couldn't help but wonder, was she truly going to push me to my limits? Or was this just the beginning of a much bigger battle? The next few days felt like a blur. It was like I was living in a bad dream, where every time I thought I had a moment of peace, Karen's shadow loomed over me. Her presence in the neighborhood seemed to be everywhere. It wasn't just about the HOA fines anymore. It wasn't just about her car getting towed or my tractor getting wrecked. No, Karen was playing a much bigger game now, and I knew she wasn't going to stop until she got what she wanted. That morning, as I stood by my tractor, inspecting the damage again, I could feel the weight of everything that had happened. My lawyer had been working non-stop, gathering evidence and strategizing for what was coming next. But as I stood there, I couldn't help but feel like I was out of my depth. Karen wasn't just some petty neighbor anymore. She was a force, and she had the HOA in her pocket. I had one shot to make this right, and if I screwed it up, it could all fall apart. I knew I had to be careful. This wasn't just about standing up for myself anymore. It was about standing up for the entire neighborhood, the people who had been silenced by the HOA, the ones too afraid to speak out against Karen's iron grip. If I lost now, it would be more than just a personal defeat. It would be a victory for her and everything she stood for. But what could I do? I was just one person, fighting a battle against an entire system, one that had been built around power and control. Karen knew exactly how to manipulate the HOA to get what she wanted. She was calculating, and every move she made was strategic. And there she was again. I spotted her down the street, walking slowly, her eyes scanning the neighborhood like she owned it. Her gaze landed on me, and for a split second I saw her smile, that same twisted smile she always wore when she was ready to ruin someone's life. It was then I realized I had no choice but to fight fire with fire. I walked inside my house, my mind racing. My phone buzzed on the counter, pulling me out of my thoughts. It was a message from my lawyer. I opened it quickly, my heart pounding. Karen's pulled some strings. She's getting the HOA to take action against you, legally. We need it to move quickly. Get ready. My blood ran cold. It wasn't just about fines anymore. She was going for my property. She was going to use the HOA's power to tear me down, and this time she wasn't playing games. I couldn't let that happen. I knew I had to fight back, and I had to do it smart. I couldn't let her drag me into some lengthy legal battle. I needed to hit back in a way that would make Karen think twice about messing with me. I called my lawyer, my voice low and steady. We need to go on the offense. I'm done being the target. We'll get this sorted, he said, his tone reassuring. But you need to understand, Karen's got leverage. You need to be prepared for anything. I will, I said, already forming a plan in my mind. Let's take the fight to her. The next few days felt like a whirlwind of activity. I was working with my lawyer to gather more evidence, documenting every interaction I had with Karen and the HOA. Every email, every letter, every phone call. I knew the more I had, the better my chances of proving that Karen's actions were beyond the pale. But I also knew it wasn't enough just to be right. I had to be strategic. Karen had no idea what was coming. I spent hours researching the HOA's bylaws, looking for loopholes, anything I could use to turn the tables, and that's when I found it. There was a clause in the HOA's rules that Karen had been overlooking. It wasn't a huge issue, but it was big enough. If I played my cards right, I could expose Karen for what she truly was, a power-hungry control freak who was using the HOA to make her life easier at the expense of everyone else's. I couldn't just sit back and wait anymore. I had to take action. One evening, just as the sun was setting, I saw Karen in her usual spot, standing outside her house, arms crossed, watching the neighborhood. I knew what she was doing. She was making sure everything was in line, keeping an eye on people. But I had a surprise for her. I walked over to her house, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew this was risky, but at this point, I didn't care. It was time to take the fight to her front door. I rang the doorbell, and a few moments later, Karen appeared. Her eyes widened when she saw me standing there. "Hello, Karen," I said, my voice calm but firm. She stepped back, visibly surprised. "What do you want?" I want to talk about the HOA rules, I said, stepping inside without waiting for her to answer. And I want you to stop using them to get what you want. She looked at me like I was crazy. What are you talking about? You're the one who's been breaking the rules. I took a deep breath. That's not true. I've been following the rules. But you, Karen, you've been using the HOA to punish people, to get your way. You've been going after me because I stood up to you. Her face went pale as I spoke. I could see the anger bubbling up inside her, but she was trying to keep it in check. She wasn't used to people talking to her like this. She wasn't used to people standing up to her. You have no idea what you're talking about, she spat. I've done nothing but try to make this neighborhood better. I stepped closer, my voice low. You don't make the neighborhood better, Karen. You make it miserable. You use your power to hurt people. And I'm not going to let you do it anymore. For a moment, she didn't say anything. She just stood there, staring at me, like she was trying to process what I had just said. And then her expression shifted. She smiled. This time, it wasn't a smug, twisted grin. It was something different, something colder. I'll make sure you regret this, she said, her voice filled with venom. You'll pay for this. I'll make sure of it. I stood there, staring at her, the weight of her words sinking in. But I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. The tension was unbearable. Every morning, I woke up with the same knot in my stomach, the same feeling that something was about to snap. Karen had warned me, threatened me, but I couldn't back down now. I knew she was planning something, and whatever it wasn't going to be pretty. She wasn't the type to take defeat lying down. No, Karen would do whatever it took to keep her grip on this neighborhood. I'd spent the last few days preparing for what was coming. I had gathered every shred of evidence I could find, every legal loophole I could use. I had my lawyer on standby, ready to make the next move. But I still couldn't shake the feeling that Karen had something else planned. She was too quiet, too still. The storm was coming, and I could feel it in my bones. It was just past noon when I got the call, the one I'd been dreading. It was from my lawyer. His voice was tense, urgent. You need to come down to the HOA office now. We've got a situation. My stomach dropped. What's going on? I can't go into details over the phone, but trust me, you need to get here immediately, he said before hanging up. I grabbed my keys and headed out the door without a second thought. My mind was racing as I drove toward the HOA office. What had Karen done now? What was her next move? I pulled into the parking lot and parked. My heart was pounding in my chest as I walked into the office, my footsteps echoing in the otherwise empty building. My lawyer was waiting for me, pacing nervously by the door. Talk to me, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, but it was hard. He took a deep breath before speaking. Karen's pulled every string she has. She's filing a lawsuit. She's claiming that you've been harassing her, causing distress and violating HOA rules. And she's got the HOA backing her. This could be bad. Really bad. I could feel the weight of his words pressing down on me. What do you mean, the HOA's backing her? He lowered his voice. They've already held a hearing, and it's looking like they're going to side with her. She's got the support of enough people in the board to make this a real legal issue. If we don't act fast, you could lose everything. Your property, your tractor, everything. I felt a cold wave of panic rush over me. Was this it? Was Karen really going to get away with this? No, I said, shaking my head. I'm not going to let her win. He gave me a grim look. We have to act fast. I've already started putting together a defense, but this is going to take everything we've got. You have to be ready for anything. I stood there for a moment, trying to absorb everything he had just told me. It felt like the walls were closing in, like I was trapped. But I wasn't going to let Karen destroy my life. I wasn't going to let her win. We'll fight, I said, my voice steely with resolve. We'll fight and we'll win. I've had enough. The next few days were a blur of legal jargon, court documents, and hours of strategizing. My lawyer worked around the clock, but I knew we were up against a powerful opponent. The HOA wasn't just a group of nosy neighbors, it was an organized machine, and Karen was its queen. She wasn't playing by the rules anymore, she was playing a dirty game, and she had all the right people in her corner. The more I learned about her tactics, the more I realized how deep her influence went. But I wasn't going to back down. The day on to Huz of the hearing arrived, and the weight of everything hit me like a ton of bricks. I walked into the courtroom with my lawyer by my side, my heart pounding in my chest. The HOA board was already seated, their eyes on us as we entered. And then there was Karen, sitting in the front row, looking smug as ever, as if she had already won. She didn't even look at me, but I could feel her gaze burning into me. I sat down, trying to steady my breathing, trying to keep calm, but it was hard. The stakes were too high. Everything I had worked for, everything I believed in, was on the line. The judge called the hearing to order, and I felt my stomach twist into knots. I couldn't afford to mess this up, not now. The lawyer representing the HOA spoke first. Your Honor, we are here to discuss the violations committed by the defendant, Mr. My last name, and the damages caused by his actions. The HOA has had numerous complaints from the community about his disregard for HOA rules. I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to speak out. It was a lie. I had followed the rules. I wasn't the one causing problems, but the board members were nodding along with every word, their faces impassive. Then Karen stood up. She looked over at me, her face a mask of false innocence. Your Honor, she said, her voice sweet but sharp, I've tried to be reasonable. I've tried to help Mr. My last name understand the importance of following the rules, but he's been nothing but a problem. He refuses to cooperate, and now he's threatening me. He's harassing me, and I'm scared for my safety. The room went silent. My blood ran cold as I realized what she was doing. She was playing the victim. She was painting me as the villain. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I wasn't going to sit there and let her lie to everyone. I stood up, my voice shaking but determined. Your Honor, that's a lie. I have not harassed anyone. I've followed every rule that the HOA has set. The only reason we're here today is because Karen is abusing her position. She's using the HOA to settle personal vendettas. I could feel the eyes of the board on me, the tension rising in the room. But I didn't care. I had to stand up for myself. I had to make them see the truth. The judge raised an eyebrow, his gaze flicking between Karen and me. This is a serious accusation. Do you have any evidence to support your claim? My lawyer stepped forward. Yes, Your Honor. We have proof that the HOA rules were being manipulated, and we have records of the constant harassment from Mr. Karen's last name. Karen's face went pale as the evidence was presented. The tables were turning, and I could see the fear creeping into her eyes. She wasn't in control anymore. I was. Then Karen stood up. She looked over at me, her face a mask of false innocence. Your Honor, she said, her voice sweet but sharp, I've tried to be reasonable. I've tried to help Mr. My last name understand the importance of following the rules, but he's been nothing but a problem. He refuses to cooperate, and now he's threatening me. He said he's harassing me, and I'm scared for my safety. The room went silent. My blood ran cold as I realized what she was doing. She was playing the victim. She was painting me as the villain. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I wasn't going to sit there and let her lie to everyone. I stood up, my voice shaking but determined. Your Honor, that's a lie. I have not harassed anyone. I've followed every rule that the HOA has set. The only reason we're here today is because Karen is abusing her position. She's using the HOA to settle personal vendettas. I could feel the eyes of the board on me, the tension rising in the room. But I didn't care. I had to stand up for myself. I had to make them see the truth. The judge raised an eyebrow, his gaze flicking between Karen and me. "This is a serious accusation. Do you have any evidence to support your claim?" My lawyer stepped forward. "Yes, Your Honor. We have proof that the HOA rules were being manipulated, and we have records of the constant harassment from Ms. Karen's last name." Karen's face went pale as the evidence was presented. The tables were turning, and I could see the fear creeping into her eyes. She wasn't in control anymore. I was